My HOA President neighbor cut my Christmas light cords with hedge trimmers because I was one day late taking them down. So I checked my property line and realized her brand new $15,000 she shed was sitting 6 inches on my land. I didn't ask her to move it. I rented a concrete saw and removed the 6 inches myself. I live in a neighborhood where the grass is measured with a ruler and the trash cans are hidden behind color-matched screens. It is a suburban utopia on the surface and a totalitarian regime underneath. The dictator of this regime is Brenda. Brenda is the HOA president. She lives next door. She is a woman who wakes up every morning and chooses violence, armed with a clipboard, a tape measure, and a sense of entitlement that could crush a small sedan. I usually keep my head down. I pay my dues, I mow my lawn in diagonal stripes like she prefers, and I smile when she lectures me about the visual noise of my garden hose being left uncoiled for 10 minutes. I do this because I just want to live my life. I work hard, I pay my mortgage, and I just want peace. But this week, I was down for the count. I caught the flu on New Year's Eve, the real flu, the kind that makes your bones ache and your fever spike to 102. I had been in bed for 3 days, shivering under 4 blankets, surviving on Gatorade and Dayquil, drifting in and out of a delirium where I dreamt I was being crushed by a giant snowball. It was Sunday morning, January 4th. The official HOA rulebook, a binder thick enough to stop a bullet, states that all holiday decorations must be removed by January 5th. Tomorrow. I was fully aware of the deadline. I was planning to drag myself out of bed tomorrow afternoon, load up on ibuprofen and take them down. I still had 24 hours. At 7 a.m., my doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite ring. It wasn't the ring of a neighbor coming to borrow sugar or check if I was alive. It was a rhythmic, aggressive pounding that vibrated through my skull like a jackhammer. I stumbled to the door in my bathrobe, shivering from the fever chills. My eyes felt like they were full of sand. I opened the door to find Brenda standing there, fully dressed in her power suit, hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde authority, holding a pair of heavy-duty hedge trimmers. "Good morning," she snapped, not looking at me but at my roof line. "It is January 4th. Your lights are still up." "Morning, Brenda," I croaked, my voice sounding like gravel rattling in a tin can. "I know, I have until the 5th. I'm really sick. I've got the flu. I was going to take them down tomorrow when I hopefully feel a bit better." "The 5th is the deadline for removal," she lectured, tapping the trimmers against her leg. "That means they should be down before the 5th. They are an eyesore. It's January. Christmas is over. Move on. The neighborhood aesthetic is shifting to winter clean, and your blinking icicles are disrupting the visual harmony." "I have until midnight tomorrow," I said, leaning against the doorframe for support because the world was spinning slightly to the left. "Please, Brenda, I'm dizzy. I'll get to it. Can you just cut me some slack? I've never been late before." "If they aren't down by noon today, I am issuing a fine," she said, her eyes cold and hard. $100 per day. It's in the bylaws. Section 4. Paragraph C. Failure to adhere to seasonal timelines will result in immediate financial penalties. "You can't fine me before the deadline," I argued, my head throbbing. "That's not how contracts work. That's not how time works." "I am the president," she said, puffing up her chest. "I interpret the bylaws. I decide what constitutes a reasonable effort. You sleeping in until 7 a.m. is not a reasonable effort. Noon, or you pay." She turned around and marched back down my walkway, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. I watched her go, too tired to fight, too sick to scream. I closed the door, locked it, and went back to bed, assuming she was bluffing. Surely no human being is that petty. Surely she wouldn't fine a sick man for being within the legal window of the rules. I fell into a fever sleep. It was a deep, restless darkness. I woke up at 11 a.m. to a sound. Snip, snip. It was a sharp, metallic sound, rhythmic. I sat up. I looked out the window. Brenda was in my front yard. She wasn't inspecting the lights. She was cutting them. She had her hedge trimmers and she was methodically severing the extension cords running along my porch railing. Snip, my commercial-grade icicle lights went dead. Snip, the power cord to the inflatable snowman was severed, and he deflated into a sad, white puddle of nylon on the lawn. Snip, the laser projector cable was cut in half. I ran outside. Adrenaline overrode the fever. I didn't put on shoes. I ran out in my socks into the slush. "What are you doing?" I screamed. Brenda looked up, unbothered. She didn't look guilty, she looked satisfied. "It's almost noon. You didn't move them, I'm helping you. Now they are down. You can drag them to the curb." "You just destroyed my property," I yelled, my voice cracking. "Those are commercial-grade lights. That cord cost $40. You can't just cut my things." "Consider it a service fee," she smirked, snapping the trimmers closed. "You can bill the HOA, I'll deny it, of course. Nobody likes a tacky neighbor who leaves trash up in January. I'm doing the community a favor." She turned her back on me. She walked back to her house, swinging the trimmers like a weapon. I stood there in the cold, staring at my ruined decorations. The wires were frayed, the plugs were destroyed, hundreds of dollars of equipment ruined because she couldn't wait 24 hours. The anger that flooded my system was hot enough to burn off the flu. It was a clarity I hadn't felt in days. I didn't care about the fine. I didn't care about the lights. I cared about the disrespect. She had trespassed. She had vandalized my home. She had looked me in the eye and told me that her impatience was more important than my property rights. I went inside and called the police non-emergency line to file a report for vandalism. The dispatcher sounded sympathetic but tired. "We can send an officer out to take a statement," she said. "But honestly, sir, with neighbor disputes like this, it usually ends up being a civil matter. Unless she threatened you physically, there isn't much we can do immediately." "She came onto my property with a weapon," I said. "Those trimmers are sharp." "We'll send someone," she promised. While I waited, I went to my home office. I wanted to destroy her. I wanted to find a loophole in the bylaws to impeach her. I wanted to find a noise ordinance she had violated. I pulled out my file box where I kept my house documents, the mortgage, the insurance, the closing papers. I found the survey map from when I bought the house 3 years ago. It was a large, folded piece of paper with blue lines and precise measurements. My lot is a weird shape. It angles sharply on the left side, the side bordering Brenda's house. Because of the cul-de-sac curve, the property lines aren't straight squares, they are trapezoids. I looked at the map. I traced the line with my finger. Then I looked out the window at Brenda's side yard. Last month, Brenda had built a she shed. It was a massive prefab studio where she did her crafting, which mostly involved making signs that said live, laugh, love in aggressive fonts and writing fine notices. It was brand new. It sat on a poured concrete slab. She had bragged about it on the neighborhood Facebook page for weeks. "My sanctuary," she called it. "My space to get away from the noise." I looked at the map again. I grabbed a 100-foot tape measure from my tool drawer. I put on my boots. I put on my coat. I walked out to the property line. I found the iron pin buried in the grass near the sidewalk, the official marker placed by the city surveyors. I dug the grass away with my heel until I saw the rusty metal cap. I hooked the tape measure onto it. I walked back toward the fence line, following the angle indicated on the survey. My heart started to race. My hands were shaking, and not just from the cold. The line wasn't where the fence was. The fence was actually 2 feet inside my property line. The previous owner had built it lazily to avoid a tree root, but Brenda's shed. I measured 3 times. I checked the angle. I cross-referenced the distance from the corner of my house. Brenda's shed, specifically the back corner and the entire concrete footer, was sitting 6 inches over the property line. On my land. She had built a permanent structure on my property without a permit. I checked the city portal on my phone right there in the yard. No permit filed for a shed of that size, and without a variance. She had assumed the fence was the line. She hadn't checked. She was so busy measuring my grass height that she forgot to measure her own land. I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in 4 days. It was a cold, predatory smile. I didn't knock on her door. I didn't yell. I called a guy I knew from high school, Mike, who runs a construction equipment rental business. "Mike," I said, "do you have a concrete saw available, the big one, the walk-behind kind with the diamond blade?" "Yeah," Mike said, "I got one. What are you cutting, a patio?" "A shed," I said, "well, part of one." The police officer arrived at 1 p.m. to take the report about the lights. He was a young guy, looked like he would rather be anywhere else. He looked at the cut cords lying in the snow. He looked at the ring footage I showed him on my phone, the clear video of Brenda marching up, snipping the cords with a smile on her face and tossing the ends onto the ground. "Yeah, that's criminal mischief," he said, writing it down on his notepad. "Technically destruction of property. It's a misdemeanor, but since the value is under $500, she'll probably just get a citation and a court date." "I want to press charges," I said. "I want it on record." "I'll go have a word with her," he said. He went next door. I watched from the window. Brenda answered the door, looking shocked that the police would dare question her. I saw her pointing at my house, waving her arms, doing the whole "I am the president" routine. The officer wasn't buying it. He handed her a pink slip of paper, a citation. She stormed back inside, slamming the door so hard I felt it through the floor. But I wasn't done. The citation was a slap on the wrist. I wanted a knockout. I wanted to teach her a lesson about boundaries that she would never forget. Mike dropped off the concrete saw at 2 p.m. It was a beast of a machine, orange and loud, with a 14-inch diamond blade capable of slicing through reinforced concrete like butter. It smelled of gasoline and potential. I also printed out a copy of my survey map. I highlighted the property line in bright yellow marker. I walked over to the property line. I used orange spray paint to mark the exact boundary on the ground. I painted a line through the grass, over the dirt, and right across the corner of her concrete slab. The line went right through the back corner of her shed's foundation and sliced off a chunk of the wooden siding. I put on my safety goggles. I put on my ear protection. I put on my heavy work gloves. I fired up the saw. The sound was deafening. It roared like a jet engine, a mechanical scream that shattered the quiet Sunday afternoon. It vibrated in my hands, eager to eat. Brenda came running out of her house. She was wearing her crafting apron covered in glitter. She looked furious. "What is that noise?" she screamed. "You are violating the noise ordinance. It's Sunday. You can't run heavy machinery on Sunday." I didn't hear her over the saw. I lined up the blade with the orange paint. I revved the engine. I lowered the blade. Screech. Dust flew into the air. Concrete chips sprayed like shrapnel. The blade bit into the slab. The sound changed from a roar to a high-pitched grind that set your teeth on edge. Brenda ran up to the property line. She stopped when she saw where I was cutting. Her eyes bulged. "Stop," she shrieked. "That's my shed. You're cutting my shed. Are you insane?" I stopped the saw but kept the engine idling. I lifted my earmuffs. "I am cutting the encroachment on my property," I yelled over the idle rumble. "I checked the survey. You built 6 inches over the line." "You can't do that," she screamed, stamping her foot. "It's my property. I'm the president. I approved the placement." "You approved it on my land," I said. "You're a trespasser. And per the city code, I have the right to remove obstructions from my land. You didn't ask for a variance. You didn't get a permit. This concrete is on my dirt, and I want my dirt back." "I'll sue you," she screamed. "I'll sue you for everything you have." "Go ahead," I said. "But right now I'm doing landscaping. Step back, Brenda. Safety first." I put the earmuffs back down. I engaged the blade. I cut the entire 6-inch strip of concrete off the side of her slab. The saw ate through it. When I reached the wood of the shed, I stopped the concrete saw. The shed groaned. The structural integrity of the corner was now compromised. The concrete footer was gone. Then I turned off the saw. I picked up a sledgehammer and a pry bar I had laid out. I walked up to the wooden corner of the shed that was hanging over the line, suspended in the air now that the foundation was gone. "Don't you dare," Brenda whispered. She was pale, she was trembling, she looked like she was watching a murder. "You cut my lights," I said. "I'm trimming my property line." I swung the hammer. Crack! The siding splintered. I swung again. The corner post, which wasn't structural luckily for her, or unluckily, depending on how you look at it, snapped. I tore the siding off with the pry bar. I exposed the pink insulation. I exposed the interior of her sanctuary. I could see her craft table. I could see her live, laugh, love sign hanging on the back wall. I cleared the debris, throwing the wood and concrete chunks onto her side of the line. "There," I said, dusting off my hands. "Now it's legal." Brenda was on the ground. She was literally on her knees, sobbing over the broken corner of her shed. "My sanctuary," she wailed. "You ruined it. It's open to the elements." "You ruined my Christmas lights," I said. "And you woke me up at 7 a.m. and you trespassed. I think we're even." She called the police again. The same officer came back. He looked tired. He looked like he wanted to go home. "What now?" he asked, stepping out of his cruiser. "He destroyed my shed," Brenda screamed, pointing at the jagged hole in the corner where the wind was now blowing into her craft room. "He used a saw. He's a maniac." I handed the officer the survey. I showed him the line. I showed him the spray paint. I showed him the iron pin. "She built over the line," I said. "I removed the encroachment. I didn't touch anything on her side of the line. I was very precise." The officer looked at the survey. He walked the line. He looked at the shed. He looked at the cut concrete, which was perfectly straight. "Technically," the officer said, fighting a smile, "he is within his rights to secure his property boundary. You built on his land, ma'am. Permanent structures cannot cross property lines." "But he used a saw." "He used the appropriate tool for concrete removal," I interjected. "Ma'am," the officer said, looking at the shed closer, "did you have a permit for this structure?" Brenda froze. The sobbing stopped. I am the HOA President. I approved it myself." "That's not a city permit," the officer said. "This looks like a permanent structure with a foundation. It has electricity running to it. You need a city permit for anything over 120 square feet, and you definitely need an electrical permit. This looks like a 12x12. That's 144 square feet." He walked over to the open wall. He looked at the wiring I had exposed. "Is that an extension cord buried in the dirt?" he asked. Brenda didn't answer. He pulled out his notepad. "I'm going to have to report this to code enforcement. Building without a permit is a violation. Unsafe electrical is a violation. And building over a property line is a violation." Brenda looked like she was going to be sick. "And the lights?" I asked the officer. "Did she pay the citation?" "Not yet," he said, "but that will be the least of her worries." Code enforcement came out today, Monday. They inspected the shed. Not only was it over the property line, which I had already fixed, but it was unpermitted. It also had electrical wiring that she had run herself from the house with an orange extension cord buried 2 inches in the dirt, a massive fire hazard. They red-tagged it, unsafe structure. She has 30 days to demolish it completely or pay a fine of $500 a day. Plus, the retroactive permit fees, which are double, the fine for building without a permit, and the cost of the electrical violation. Total fines estimated, $15,000, plus the cost of the shed itself, which was another $10,000 down the drain. She came to my door an hour ago. She looked defeated. Her hair was flat. Her power suit was gone, replaced by sweatpants. "I'll pay for the lights," she whispered. "I'll buy you new ones. Please don't testify at the code hearing. Please tell them you gave me permission for the shed." "I already sent them the photos," I said, "and the video of you cutting my cords. It speaks to your character. And frankly, Brenda, I don't want a fire hazard 6 inches from my fence." She walked away. I heard her crying in her broken, red-tagged shed. "I bought new lights today. They are brighter. They are LED. I'm going to put them up next year, and I'm going to put them exactly 1 inch from the property line." And the best part, the HOA board called an emergency meeting tonight. They are voting to remove her as president for conduct unbecoming and exposing the association to liability. So, dear viewers, was I wrong for taking a slice of her sanctuary? If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.